At 9:14 p.m. on a Tuesday, a tire blows on the side of a highway. You pull onto the shoulder, hazard lights on, phone out. You look up a tow and a patch. The number comes back to $287. You open the banking app, $112. The chain begins. Your check will not cover the tow. You put it on a credit card, sitting at $3,800. The card declines. You try the second card, it goes through with a soft warning. You missed the 10 p.m. shift at your second job, $94 gone. You sleep for 4 hours. You wake up and check the account. An overdraft fee has been added for a subscription that hit while the balance sat at $112, $35. Your phone bill autopays the next morning. It bounces, another $35 fee. By Thursday, a single tire on a Tuesday has cost you $287 plus, $94 plus, $70 plus, $45 in interest, plus a borrowed $40 from a friend you did not want to ask. $536 from one tire. At this level, what happens is this. Small events become chain reactions. A single unexpected cost triggers 6 others. Money does not pause when a problem arrives. It pulls other problems out of the wall. The first consequence of being broke is compounding pain. You pay the poverty tax without realizing a tax is being collected, the overdraft fee, the late fee, the high interest card, the check cashing fee, the bounce payment, the missed shift, the borrowed 40. You pay more for everything. You pay for speed. You pay for urgency. You pay for not having the cash to pay on time. The second consequence is forced absence. You say no to things you wanted to say yes to. Not because you chose to say no, because the math said no. The birthday, the doctor, the class, the trip, the pair of shoes you needed 6 months ago. At this level, nothing stops happening. Events keep arriving, and every event costs more than it should, because you lack the cushion to absorb it. The tire blew. The consequences keep arriving. None of them is your fault. All of them are your responsibility. 3 years later, the same tire blows, same highway, same hour. You pull onto the shoulder, hazard lights on, phone out. The tow comes back at $287. You open the banking app, $4,600. You pay. The next morning, you go to work. The following morning, you go to work. The week ends, the balance drops to $4,313 and then climbs back to $4,900 by the end of the month. No overdraft fee, no bounce bill, no borrowed 40, no missed shift, no secondary chain, one event, one cost, one line item. At this level, what happens is this. An emergency stops being a catastrophe. It becomes a cost. The first consequence of stability is the end of the chain reaction. Events stop compounding. A problem is a problem. A bill is a bill. Each one stops at its own line. What stops happening? The overdraft fees, the late fees, the apologetic text to friends, the stack of notices on the counter, the pit in your stomach when the phone rings from an unknown number, the collection calls, the anxiety that used to live in your chest while you ate. You sleep through the night. You take the call without flinching. You open the mail without a sinking feeling. You still budget, you still think about money, you still care about prices. Stability is not wealth. Stability is the absence of crisis. Here, the day begins differently. You wake without a running list of threats. The mind used to calculate. Now the mind rests. At night, you cook a meal, watch a show, and sleep a full 7 hours. A tire blew this week, and you did not tell anyone. The event ended at the event. The second consequence of stability is silence. Not a peaceful silence, a boring one. And boredom is the first gift money gives you. 7 years in, the car does not blow a tire on a highway. The car is newer. The tires are checked. A roadside assistance plan is included with the insurance. A check engine light comes on. The shop quote is $1,200. You pay. You do not pause. The math is irrelevant. At this level, what happens is this. Events stop being forced on you. They start being chosen by you. You choose which gym. You choose which doctor. You choose which dentist. You choose which neighborhood. You choose which car. You choose the vacation dates, not the cheapest dates. You choose the flight time, not the cheapest flight. The first consequence of comfort is choice. The menu opens. The pricing becomes invisible. The items become options. What stops happening? The endless negotiation with yourself. The list of things you wanted and told yourself you did not need. The filtered version of your life, which used to show up on the plate. The compromise you made every morning before the day started. You take a weekend trip without a spreadsheet. You buy a gift without a calculator. You sign up for a class because the class interests you. You upgrade a flight because the flight was 6 hours. And the extra 100 was worth more than the pain. The second consequence of comfort is the softening of pressure. Not the removal of pressure, the softening. You still work, you still care about promotion, you still invest, but the base layer of urgency has left. At this level, a new thing begins. You start building, not surviving. You look at a 10-year horizon instead of a 10-day one. The questions change. What is my tax strategy? What is my asset allocation? What is my emergency fund? What is my retirement number? You are no longer reacting to money. You are designing with it. 12 years in, a different event, a college you attended calls. They would like you on an advisory board. The room seats 9 people. There are executives, 2 own businesses, 2 teachers teach at the school, 2 are donors. You fit because of a business you built. The business pulls in $800,000 a year. Your share of it, after taxes, funds a life most people do not picture when they think of comfort. At this level, what happens is this. Doors open, invitations arrive, rooms you did not know existed become rooms you sit in. The first consequence of affluence is access, private networks, curated groups, better doctors, better lawyers, better accountants, better schools for children. A class of information that is not published, only passed. You start hearing about deals before they happen. You start hearing about jobs before they post. You start hearing about buildings before they sell. The signal is not secret. The signal is closed loop, and you now sit inside the loop. What stops happening? The cold applications, the waiting, the hope, the process of asking strangers for permission. The interview depended on luck, the deal, which depended on being seen. You are seen now. You are seen by a small number of people who matter in a small number of ways. The network walks to you. The second consequence of affluence is recognition. Not a celebrity, not fame. A quieter thing. Other affluent people recognize you as one of them. A small nod, a small reference, a small inclusion. Here, the day begins differently. You read 3 emails in the morning, which would have been out of reach 6 years ago. An introduction, a proposal, an invitation. At night, dinner happens with 3 people who run businesses worth 8 figures. The conversation is not about wealth. The conversation is about problems wealth creates, and how to spend time in a way that is worth anything at all. The tire never blows at this level, and if one did, a person handles it before the word reaches you. 18 years in, a different kind of event, a press release goes out about a company you invested in 4 years ago. The acquisition closes on a Tuesday morning. Your stake converts to a number you do not announce. At this level, what happens is this. Events stop happening to you. They start happening through you. Your decisions move things. Your signature on a document shifts the direction of a company. Your capital, allocated in one afternoon, changes the survival odds of a business 3 states away. A phone call from you changes the meeting schedule of 5 other people. The first consequence of wealth is leverage. Your hour is not worth an hour anymore. It is worth a multiplier. The math changes. An employee is hired because you said yes. A building is bought because you wrote a check. A book is published because you introduced a writer. A law firm is retained because you needed one, and they rearranged their week. What stops happening? The waiting in waiting rooms, the standing in line, the driving to pick something up, the filling out of basic forms. The day-to-day friction of being a regular customer. You still have friction. The friction is at a higher level, a tax audit, a lawsuit, a board dispute, a partner disagreement, a lawyer's bill. These events live above the tire on the highway. The second consequence of wealth is distance, a quiet distance from the ordinary world, not contempt, not malice, a measurable gap in how a day unfolds. A gap that is not easy to cross back. Here, the day begins differently. A team handles the first layer of every incoming event. You see only the filtered version. The emails come sorted, the calls come scheduled, the requests come tagged. At night, you make 3 decisions that move more money than a full year of work from your younger self. You think about this sometimes. You do not think about it for long. 25 years in, 100 million sits across a map of entities. A wildfire threatens a property you own. A crisis team activates. A private pilot relocates your family. A chef stocks a second house. A security firm deploys. A lawyer sends updates every 3 hours. You land in a different state before the fire line reaches the first ridge. You sleep a full night. You eat a meal that was ready when you arrived. The event was handled through a system with your name on it. At this level, what happens is this: events stop being personal. They become organizational. The first consequence of ultra-wealth is infrastructure. A wildfire is not an emergency. A wildfire is a procedure. A lawsuit is not a crisis. A lawsuit is a document in a folder. A health issue is not a scramble. A health issue is a scheduled visit with a specialist who flies to you. What stops happening? The direct labor of daily problems, the grocery run, the cleaning, the driving, the scheduling, the managing, the calling, the coordinating, waiting on hold, the physical tasks of running a life. You have moved 2 layers away from the friction. A person handles the friction. A team manages the person. A system structures the team. A family office oversees the structure. The second consequence of ultra-wealth is insulation. Your environment adjusts to you, not the reverse. Rooms arrive prepared. Transport arrives on schedule. Meals arrive on time. Every scene you walk into has been staged by someone who knows your preferences. Here, the day begins differently. You wake. You read. You walk. You eat. You work if you choose. You think a lot. You decide a little. The few decisions you make are enormous. At night, a legal team closes a deal in a different city. You read a summary, you approve. The event enters history through a system you did not touch directly. The tire, if it blows, is changed before you know it blew. 40 years in, the net worth is measured in billions. The name is measured in generations. A presidential candidate sits in a living room. A nonprofit is named after a relative. A building carries a last name. A museum exhibit opens, which includes a letter your grandfather wrote. At this level, what happens is this. Events stop being yours. They become the family's. They become the names. They become the records. The first consequence of dynastic wealth is history. Your choices are read into books. Your donations are announced in headlines. Your words are minuted in board notes, which outlive you. Your mistakes are archived along with your wins. Everything is documented. What stops happening? Privacy in any meaningful public sense. A letter was sent casually, a photograph taken casually, a sentence spoken casually. Every casual thing becomes a record. The second consequence is structural permanence. The money no longer lives in accounts. It lives in trusts, holdings, estates, foundations, entities, and instruments that outlast a lifetime. An attorney sets up a structure that will exist in the year 2104. Here, the day begins differently. You wake in a house that has hosted heads of state. You eat a breakfast prepared by a chef who has cooked for 4 presidents. You read a paper that mentions a company bearing your surname. At night, a foundation in your name funds a hospital wing that will treat a child who has not been born yet. A trust releases a distribution to a grandchild who has not been conceived yet. The events are not in your week, they are in the century. The tire on the highway is not a memory you share. It belongs to the first chapter of a story the family has rewritten so many times that the original version is archived in a document nobody opens. Events at this level are no longer personal. They are historical. The difference between you and the person on the highway shoulder is not talent. It is structured. A structure built one event at a time across 6 stages for decades by someone who never planned to stop. Somewhere tonight, on a different highway, a tire blows at 9:14 p.m., a car pulls onto the shoulder, hazard lights on, a phone comes out, a tow quote comes back at $287. A banking app opens, $112, sits in the account, the chain begins. An overdraft fee, a missed shift, a borrowed $40, a late bill, a bounce payment, a $536 event from one $287 tire. The person does not know yet. At each level of money, the same tire will cost a different amount. Not because of the tire, because of the structure around it. At Broke, the tire costs $536. At Stable, the tire costs $287. At Comfortable, the tire costs an afternoon. At Affluent, the tire costs a phone call. At Wealthy, the tire costs a text to a teen. At the Ultra Wealthy, the tire is changed before the word reaches them. At Dynastic, the tire belongs to a story the family tells its children about the beginning. What happens at every level of money is the same event, read by a different system. The tire does not change. The life around it does.